I want to thank one of our incredible sponsors, BrainTap. You may have listened to our podcast with the founder of BrainTap, Patrick Porter. And if you did, you'll definitely want to get involved in BrainTap. And if you didn't, please, I strongly recommend that you go back and listen. It's so incredibly informative. Here's what BrainTap can do. You can literally build your brain fitness with BrainTap's mobile app and wearable headset. Everyone here at Outcomes the Sun podcast has had and continues to have positive results with BrainTap. Your brain is guided from awake and reactionary patterns to intuitive and creative responses. BrainTap is backed by neuroscience and research and was developed by Patrick Porter himself. BrainTap creates a symphony of brainwave activity to optimize your brain's potential, restore your ability, balance your energy, and calm your brain. And listen, it is a game changer when it comes to sleep. This technology is truly a gift, and I am so incredibly grateful to be able to share it with you.
Hello. You are joining the Outcomes the Sun podcast. I'm Mariel Hemingway, and this is my partner, Melissa Yamaguchi. We are part of the Mariel Hemingway Foundation, which is a foundation to help everyone have a resource navigator for solutions to mental health issues. And today, it's just Melissa and I, and we're actually going to talk about bullying because it's such a big issue, right? It's like crazy big in the world. And what was interesting, because Melissa and I have these conversations, and we're like, I'm walking, she's walking in California, I'm walking right now in Arkansas. That's a whole other episode. But if I go into a Southern accent, you'll know why, because that's the part I'm playing in a movie that I'm doing here. But we talk about issues that come up, and we were, both on our walks the other day, and, bullying came up. And I realized that as a child, I was very much bullied. And I hadn't really acknowledged that until we had that conversation with us. It was very interesting because I was actually severe. I was having memories of I was like, wow, I was severely bullied as a child and didn't realize it, I think, because of the other stresses in my life. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was kids are tough, man. I mean, I think kids are tough. But what was very interesting about our conversation the other day is that it's not just kids. There is bullying going on with adults, and this social media has given this, has opened up opportunities for people to just be cruel to one another for no other reason than to get attention, get likes, whatever that means. And it's kind of become epidemic, like it is not okay. And maybe you could go into some of the details that you and I were discussing, but that you had really researched, Melissa.
Well, the first thing I want to say is, A, I'm sorry you were bullied. If I'd been your friend, I would have smashed him in the face. I would have been right by your side. B, the American Psychological Association identifies bullying as this. Bullying is a form of aggressive behavior in which someone intentionally and repeatedly causes another person injury or discomfort. It can be physical, verbal, and it can be overt or subtle. The keys are intentionally and consistently, just constantly coming after you like a water torture, just constantly, and you just can't get a break. So the psychological breakdown that takes place, we know we've got all this stopbullying.gov and all these different organizations for our children, which we need to, because it more often than not happens great deals there, because those kids are being bullied at home, and it's that generational trauma because the parents are probably bullied, and on and on. But the effects have really serious and lasting negative effects on people that shows up in a bunch they feel rejected, they feel excluded, they feel isolated. Here's the thing that I found is that not only is it taking place in schools with children, they're starting to show a lot of bullying in nursing homes.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
that threw me when I was
I,
reading this. Like,
that actually doesn't surprise me, because I think that there has been that's that clandestine thing that has been happening for
well, not just
years, I think.
servers, not just workers to
Oh, you mean
I started to say inmates to residents,
right?
but the
But
residents against residents.
oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what
really
struck me.
interesting. Wow. Yeah, I
Yeah.
did not know that. And here's what's interesting about kind of the well, we've kind of touched on many subjects here, but um the idea that an adult intentionally is causing pain to another adult, at some point I think we have to grow up, so
Mm-hmm.
to speak, and deal with our own issues, so that, anytime you're pointing the finger at somebody else, what is that? I mean, from my kind of spiritual training of, mindfulness and meditation, it's a mirror, right? But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
anytime you blame somebody else, like, really, put the mirror up to your face, and what are you saying about yourself? Because, I mean, honestly, it at some point there has to be, and again, it gets back to that thing about mental health being a responsibility. It's a choice for you to take charge of who you are, look at who you are, and there is no blame. Like, I don't care if you were bullied as a child or if your parents were bullied. At some point, you have to look at where you come from and what are your actions saying about you, right?
Well,
And
definitely.
and like, this whole idea that somebody else deserves that, whether or not you think they deserve it, or you don't like a political person or something, and you think that
Right.
you're, quote unquote, right. Does anyone have the right to cast aspersions upon somebody else that, and I'm not talking about politicians, because maybe there is a case for that, but, in your life, to speak of human beings that you work with, or that you come across, or that had a mild friendship, or is a parent of another child, a child's friend,
Mm-hmm.
where do we get off that we have the right to make a fast judgment on another human being? And that's where I get very, I just want people to take responsibility for their own actions, and to not place blame on others, when perhaps where that anxiety, that pain, and those issues are really inside yourself. And that's
Well,
kind of a philosophical conversation, but
Well, the thing is, rejection, isolation, low self esteem, depression, anxiety, PTSD, anxiety disorder, all of this happens as a result of bullying. So, if that was never treated, you will carry it into adulthood. And then
yeah,
perhaps, unless you get help, unless you seek some therapy, you journal, you seek a counselor at
yeah.
your church, at a clinic, wherever the opportunity is, that abuse that you experience will continue to impact everyone else in your life. And
Mhm.
bullying is a form of abuse, and bullying is more often than not perpetrated by a narcissist who
Yeah.
believes that his or her way of seeing the world is far better and far superior than yours. And so they're going
Yeah.
to correct you and keep you
Yeah.
in your place because they don't like you. They don't like the way you look. They don't like the way you're acting. They don't like something. And so they believe it's their job. They put the crown on and they're going to correct it. So
Yeah.
when you and I were talking the other day about this subject, one of the things that I was sharing with you is that I had been reading about the effects of some of the reality TV and how
Yes.
um, there was a I'm trying to stay away from names here, but there was a daughter of a prominent woman on one of the shows who came out and said these shows used to be kind of fun to watch, kind of an escapism, kind of
Right.
silly, goofy
Right.
escapism. Um, but now they become mean, and they become mean spirited and directed, and there's a targeted person on the show each time now
Wow.
that one or two go after. So I started reading the article about how there have been on some of these reality shows, some of these grown women and men are acting out in a bullying behavior. And so a lot of the fans, I was really shocked at the number of well known people around the world who tune into these shows. I was really
Right.
surprised at major athletes and musicians who say, "Oh yeah, I'm a fan." And actors and actresses, I love this show. And even though it's mildly scripted, So kind
Right.
of free range to go cuckoo cuckoo to get all the eyes on the TV, right?
Right.
So this article was talking about how the impact and how it's trickling down into sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, which needs no help in learning how to bully, needs
Right.
no help. But what it's
Right.
giving them is permission to continue the bullying because rich and famous people are doing it and they get paid
Wow.
more and they're still on the shows. And so the question with some of the teachers who had contributed to this article were, how are we to fight this? And then most recently, we've had some people coming out in the media making anti group commentary, right?
Hmm.
Um, Against certain factions of people, anti, and it's there's a lot of backlash that they're getting. Sponsors are pulling their sponsorship, and people are cutting ties with them, and banks are asking them to leave, and so forth. And the what it's done with the initial perpetrator is embolden him or her to suggest that you're not going to put me in my place. You're not going to tell me what to do. I have my voice. So there's this really very, very thin, fine line of speaking your truth, having your voice, utilizing your platform, and crossing over really quickly into an area where you can cause damage and harm to another person. So if you
Yeah.
are,
And also those people who are crossing that line and using their platform. I mean, to me, it's such an irresponsibility. Like, you are irresponsible unless you are a psychiatrist or a therapist or you are well versed in what you're
mm-hmm,
talking about to I mean, it's one thing to have an opinion, but when you're
right,
actually thinking that your opinion is the truth, or when all of it is perception, right?
right,
We perceive things in our world, and if we're a narcissist, we see it as we're right and they're wrong, right? And we've
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
categorized ourselves that way. So it's wildly irresponsible and scary,
it's scary.
because they can cause not only mental damage and trauma to another person, but I mean, sometimes, I mean, and we're talking about mental health on this show. A lot of
Yeah,
time, yeah, you can send a person into a sense of isolation, depression, and who knows
crisis.
where that goes, into
And
major crisis.
and
And
what's
and
happening
we
with a
were
lot of
talking.
it. Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. No, no, no,
No, go ahead.
please. Well, go. No, no, no. Yeah. Well, it brought me back because I was thinking, oh, this is such a new thing, right? And we were talking about the other day. No, this has been going on for centuries, right? This was
Forever.
going on long before there was any technology involved. Who was it? Did you say it was Marie Antoinette? That
Marie
what
Antoinette.
Marie
She,
Antoinette was a
yes,
bully, was
yes.
a well-known bully. She would bully people in her court. And like, wow. So power does invoke this kind of really weirdly, that because it's got to be a narcissistic like
Oh,
trait,
yeah.
is that you just think because you've been given this position that you have the right to say
Favor.
whatever you want about
Yeah.
other people, and it's just not. And
There.
now it's like there's a million people with a million followers and whatever who think they have the right to
That's right.
cast their opinions out.
Well, there's a time when our kings and queens were brought into position, and it was deemed that he or she was placed there because they had God's favor. This was God's will, God's favor. So that
Wow.
positioning of I'm king and I have God's favor, no matter how insane the potential king or queen could have been, and I use that term in a clinical fashion, no matter
Right.
how mentally unwell they could have been, that whole mentality has trickled down to where we are today. So that if someone
Absolutely.
has high power celebrity and they have 1.2 million followers, 550,000 followers, whatever that is, and they already are not 100% working on themselves,
Right.
then they deem this look, I've got all this following. I've got all this notoriety.
Yeah.
I have favor.
Well, and then the people following them think that they do have more understanding, more power, and because they have access, they think, oh my gosh, they must know, right?
Yes,
Because
that's
they're
right.
there's in this
That's
position
interesting.
of
Yeah,
power.
that's
I mean,
right.
with political people, we do it all the time. Well, he's the president or he's the prime minister. Oh my gosh. Well, of course he must know. He must know, and he must have our best interest at heart. So he must be telling me the truth. And that's
Right.
where, that's where ugh, it's a slippery slope, right?
It's very
And
slippery.
then I mean you look into relationship and marriage and abusive marriages. Somebody is in the kind of powerful position, whether that's physically or mentally, or they're passive aggressive, and then that's confusing,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Passive aggressiveness is one of the most challenging and abusive things that in a relationship, in a relationship where you're getting abused, that I mean it's very difficult to be in and
Mm-hmm.
I know from experience a passive aggressive relationship is really toxic, but you don't know it if you're the victim of it, because the person who's passive aggressive is usually extremely clever and very
Mm-hmm.
good at what they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a talent. And
Oh
the
yeah.
person who's kind of subservient kind of gets twisted. And I grew up a little bit with it. And this is not, oh, poor me, I was abused. It's not that. Nobody knew what they were doing. But, it's that thing where it keys into that childhood where
Mm-hmm.
you were in a less than position in your
Mm-hmm.
in feeling about yourself, in your position in the family, so that you believed that others knew better what was good for you, right? And
That's
you
right.
always kind of gave your power to other people. That was
Mm-hmm.
my thing. I did it for years. I thought, oh my gosh, everybody else knows what's right for me other than me.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, bullying is this thing. So it starts up here, but it trickles down into so many different situations in our lives that that are actually hard to recognize. But when you start doing that work, as you were saying, work on
Mm-hmm.
yourself, and you start exploring like your heritage, where you come from, what the things are that, what are your behaviors? Why do I do these behaviors? I spent a lifetime looking at my behavior, not always lovely, but you look at your behavior in order to discover why that behavior is happening, because something in your past triggered something where you went into fight or flight, and you have that behavior
Right.
now. But if you recognize it, and that's why I often say on on our little podcast, is like, once you can recognize a behavior, and once you can kind of unravel that story by journaling or whatever, or talking to a
Mm-hmm.
friend or a therapist or whatever, that unraveling of the story can help unravel that tightening around that behavior, and you
That's
can
right.
let it go. But you can't let it go if you don't recognize it and you don't see that it's there. But there, I don't know what that means to the culture we live in right now, because something's got to change, don't you think?
Something's going to have to shift because it's not getting better, and we haven't learned how to self-regulate. If that were the
Right.
case, then we wouldn't have some of our endangered species dying because we haven't learned how to
Yeah.
regulate ourselves. But the truth of the matter is, we had Dr. Patrick Porter on
Mm-hmm.
a couple of podcasts ago, and talking about inflammation of the brain and
Yep.
and and dealing with that. So for remedies, if someone is suffering from bullying, um, if it's the person, him or herself, doing the bullying, then and they don't recognize it, then the person who is on the receiving end of it is forced to take action, him or herself. So what you have to do is recognize that, yes, I am being bullied. Yes, I am being picked on. I'm feeling isolated. Yes, we understand. We've taught our children how to do it, but it happens so much in the workplace. It's
Yeah.
happening. It's happening in the workplaces. I have a girlfriend who is an administrator on in the nursing field, and she has some younger nurses. I say young, not necessarily chronologically, but young, out of school, fresh out of school, working with her, that she is of whom she's in charge. And she said, the infighting, backstabbing, bullying that goes
Wow.
on, putting nasty notes in each other's lockers.
What?
These are grown women and some men. And she said, then they'll come to me and say, this was in my locker, and someone stole my sandwich and left me a note. You didn't need it anyway. You lose some weight. And she said, just it's
What?
nonstop bullying in the work field amongst professionals. So if you're on the receiving end of this, then what you have to do then is recognize that this is happening, admit it's happening, and it's embarrassing. As an adult,
It
if
is.
you're at work, you don't want to go up and say, hi, I'm 32 years old and I'm being bullied right now. It's embarrassing for people, but a lot of trauma and pain that we go through, we have somehow given the label of it being embarrassing, making people feel embarrassed by having it. That's why a lot of people won't
Right.
identify, my daughter is bipolar, my son has drinking problem, whatever. People don't want to identify it because it is embarrassing. But with
Right.
the trauma, if you are the receiving end, then tapping into it, literally and figuratively, because of the potential inflammation that it puts on your brain as being the recipient of it, is huge.
Yes. Oh, absolutely huge. And you taking responsibility for that, or rather the acknowledgement of that, and kind of stepping into your power is creating those limitations, those boundaries,
Absolutely.
right? And
Mhm.
those boundaries, for me, I always see it as like, well, if there's somebody online that's bullying you, there's a block. You block. You just
Mhm.
block those people, right? You block. You have to. You have
Yep.
to draw those lines. You can't be obsessive about seeing what is being said. You have to remove yourself from that equation,
That's
because
exactly right.
if you're in it, you're just going to stay in it, and then you're on a wheel, right? And you're just going to
Mariel,
go round and round.
I want to address that really quickly, and I apologize for jumping in. But
No.
that's a good point, because one of the, oh gosh, wherever the article was I read, said the very first thing to do is to address it as quickly as you can and to stay on it and let the person know, I'm not going to put up with this. If it's blocking them again, changing it, blocking, constantly stopping it,
Yeah.
then that's one of the most effective ways quickly. If parents have a child being bullied, the parents go to the school, demand to speak with the other parents of the other child, whatever, they stay on it. Then the school's like, oh, this is going to be an issue. We have to help this kid out of me. The school should do it anyway, but the parents more engaged, it helps. No matter where the
Yeah.
bullying has come from, on the school bus, wherever it's happening. But in the workforce, you have to be the person who, quote unquote, tattles, because you've got to stay on it or it will get
Yeah.
worse.
Well, and it's just like the shame and embarrassment and stigma that we talk about in mental illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to talk about it, but I think people are talking about it, especially young people are talking about it. But
Yeah.
with bullying, by the way, is a mental illness. Like, this is
Yes.
not okay. There's nothing about it that says, oh, I just need to accept this. And yes, as an adult, it is embarrassing. It is like, it feels ugly. I'm an adult. I should be able to handle this. Well, the
Mm-hmm.
way you handle it is by taking charge of it and just drawing lines in the sand. And it's not, maybe it's not, oh, making people aware of the situation, but mostly it's about creating those boundaries, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
want to keep it on the I was going to say on the down low, but I don't know, if you want to keep it kind of to yourself, then it is about doing those technical things that where you're just like drawing lines, and you're
That's
just
right.
saying, you can't cross this because I don't allow it. And when you really own that statement, when you own that you won't allow it, when you create boundaries, that's what real boundary making is about. It's about,
Yep.
like, I do not do this. And I'm sorry, you're not invited in. And it's fine if I'm not invited on yours, right? It's just, that's
That's
the way
right.
it is. But I just find it so fascinating that this this world that we live in, this kind of reality show world where people are going after each other all the time in a
All the time.
bizarre way. It's not healthy. And for us as a culture not to see that and just go, I refuse. Because, like on my Instagram page or my Facebook page, whatever, I just make it a point. I just want to share good things. I don't need to, like, my opinions about the world do not need to be expressed unless they're expressed in a very kind and gentle way, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
because, and it's just my opinion, right? It's my opinion. And I don't know. I just think I think we've lost our ability to be polite.
Oh gosh.
You know what I mean?
Oh
It's just
gosh.
like we're in this generation of like nobody's polite anymore. I have to say, being in Arkansas, kind of being in the South, there's something about the South that's quite nice. And you come from kind of this part of the world.
Well,
That part of it is, and maybe it's hidden stuff, other things, but there is a politeness that is kind of refreshing. I don't know, but we've lost our ability to be polite in the world. It's like who, when I was a kid in the business of making movies and television, um, movie stars and celebrities were there was a mystery about them, right? You didn't know
oh
everything about
yeah.
them. You didn't know what they ate in the morning. You didn't know who they were fighting with, or so and so slept with. I mean, you didn't know those things, but it was nice. I didn't want to know what Cary Grant's mean qualities were. I wanted to know that he was the most handsome, best. Not that he's really my generation, but like that was.
Yeah.
It was wonderful that you could look up to these people, whether or not you really, but they were icons that there was a mystery to. There's no mystery anymore. There's no
No.
like, oh wow, I wonder what they're like. I mean, we do a video once a week. It's just, it's sad that we've lost our ability to kind of be a little mysterious to the rest of the
Well,
world.
keep
Not
our
even
private
just
lives private. Keep our
exactly,
private life private. I mean, there's nothing.
exactly.
And what I wish that they wouldn't call it reality,
Yeah, I know,
because
because it's so
it's mildly scripted. I've had friends who've been on these reality shows, and it's mildly scripted. But it's if they took away the words reality, then maybe our younger generation who are watching these shows wouldn't say, "Well, this is
excuse me.
how people act, man. Bless you. This is how people act. Get over yourself." Right? This is
Right.
how it is. Get over yourself. And it's not. It's not acceptable. And there's a reason why we have social etiquette, because it allows us to function with each other. And we're not going anywhere.
Right.
Well, let's function. Let's function with each other and keep our private life. Just close the door every once in a while and keep the
Yeah.
private. Wasn't it Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward who left because they wanted to have their own private life, and they were gifted with 50 plus years of wonderful marriage because they kept that private life private and stayed away
And
from
they
all the.
and they did generous acts and grateful things in the world without
Yeah.
anybody knowing about it. And those are the people that we should admire. It's the ones that are
Hmm.
not looking for accolades. It's
That's
when
right.
you do something for somebody and you're doing it because it's the right thing to do, not
That's
because
right.
you want somebody to look at you and go, oh, you're such a nice person, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever, or you get more followers because
Like.
you did this. Yeah, right?
That's right.
It's different. And those, there are celebrities out there that are like that. They do
Hmm.
great things and they do it quietly and they do it without applause, and that's the right thing. I don't know, I admire that.
I do
It's the
too.
last, it's like that last kind of adventure into a chivalrous world, right? And
It's
I don't know,
true.
it's lovely, and that's how we should be. Our celebrities should be people that we look up to, right? Our sports stars should be people that we look up to, not that we just found, like, whoa, I don't need to know that. Thank you.
Yeah. Who cares if he wears boxers or briefs?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It just reminds me how boring my life is. But I'm like, I'm totally fine with that. By the way, I actually like it. I like my boring life.
Yeah. I think we change boring to calm. Calm.
Yeah,
This is a
that's
calm
exactly
life.
right. Yeah,
Yeah. And
it is.
it's better for my AFib. Yeah. I don't have it. Don't worry. But I mean, were I
It's
to.
so good. Well, this conversation is an important conversation actually, because it's a conversation that people need to be having about themselves, about the people that they engage with, that they are in tune with in their environment, that may be causing pain to another person or even you. So if you are the recipient of bullying, I give you full permission to do something about it, to create your boundaries so that so that you can live in the world feeling good about yourself and not being afraid. Because I think bullying is a form of abuse that needs to end, and we've got to culturally kind of address it. So, I mean, thank you for this conversation, Melissa, because I think, once again, we just bring up issues that need to be addressed. I really do, and we'll address this again, and we'll get an expert on to talk about bullying and really what that is doing to kids and, frankly, I guess adults, which is kind of weird. But yeah, all of us are dealing with it. And I think when we spend too much time looking at other people's lives, and remember, people, those other people's lives, it's all fake. I mean, it's all like, it's up there. Nobody's putting ugly pictures of themselves up, maybe once in a while, but not very often. Anyway, thank you for tuning in to our little discussion today, but important discussion about bullying. And join Melissa Yamaguchi and I next week for another episode of Out Comes the Sun, because we want the sun to come out for everyone every week. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Out Comes the Sun. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, on Apple, and on YouTube. And you can donate to the Mariel Hemingway Foundation at the marielhemingwayfoundation.org. And I want to spell Hemingway for you, HEMINGWAY.org. I only say that because a lot of people put 2 M's, and that just won't work. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, you can go to the donate button at the bottom, and it will take you right to a link with the QR code. And if you go to marielhemingway.org, you can also press the donate button and be able to donate to the foundation, which is designed to help guide people towards finding the right solutions for their mental health issues. That is my goal. I'm just trying to raise money so I can come up with an app and a website that has all the information you could possibly want to know about mental health and where to go. But we are in the process of making that happen, and your donation means so much to us. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.